Hello and welcome back to the Boatyard, where I store my project boat Twiggy. It is a lovely day, blue skies, the birds, perhaps you can hear them, are twittering in the trees, and the forecast is for no rain. If anything, it's almost a tiny bit too hot to do fiberglassing, but over the course of the last week we had temperatures in the UK peaking over 33 degrees Celsius. That's into the 90s Fahrenheit, which is too hot to sensibly do any fiberglassing. 20s is okay. I prefer it as about 21, 22. It's currently about 24, 25, but it's fine. I will just use a slightly lesser amount of the catalyst in the mix. And that has obviously given you a clue as to what I'm here for today, which is to put the fiberglass over the back end of the transom, having in the last project boat video put the wood core in. There are a couple of little things I need to do just before I get started, bits of prep work. I think the key, as always, is in the preparation. The first thing to do is get rid of this gas pipe here, which would normally connect to a gas bottle, because it's getting in the way of me putting fiberglass over the back of the boat. I think it's only held on with a couple of nuts on the inside and outside. Hopefully that will come off quickly. For the rest of it, before I start putting big sheets of fiberglass, if there's one thing I've learnt from Captain Joe at Fish Bump TV, it's that fiberglass doesn't like a sharp corner, and this lip is a little bit of a sharp corner, a difficult bend for fiberglass to go around. So I need to mix up a little bit more putty and just put a fillet of putty along here to make this a smoother transition between that, and then the fiberglass sheets will lie nicer over that. And that is true pretty much all around this, especially so in that top end there, which has quite a distinct lip. I'm going to have to grind that back and also smooth it over. Plus, there is quite a lot of residue from last time of when I filled the gaps around the wood. You can see all those sticky out solid bits of resin there. They're going to need to be sanded back just a little bit to make this a better surface. But item number one is that gas pipe. Pray that it comes off with no bother. Well, I've just tried my spanners on it. I have a 15 and a 17. This appears to be 16. Of course it is. So I'm going to have to try and do it with pliers. I think the whole thing's moving. Oh. Okay, so that's not helpful. That's literally twisting the whole gas pipe inside, I think. Which, I guess if it shears off, it doesn't really matter. I never intend to use the gas supply pipe again. Perhaps I need to go and brace it from inside. Drat. I didn't film what I just did because I honestly didn't think it was going to be interesting. I thought I was just going to clamp a nut from this side. However, it turns out the gas pipe had the usual nut, and then what do you call those little brass circular things that get squished, compression type fitting. There's a word for the little brass thing that gets squished. Anyway, I was able to unscrew that and pull the gas pipe out, and that just left a single nut holding the other side of that connector on, that barb connector on, and I was able to unscrew that as well. So now, in theory, I can either push that out or pull it out from the other side. And while I'm in here, I will just point out, look, I've got a brand new little 30 amp hour 12 volt battery to drive the bilge pump. I've got a proper sized bit of hose now to go on the bilge pump, and I've also bought the world's smallest PWM solar charge controller, which will sit between the world's smallest solar panel and that battery and just ensure that it is properly charged rather than just being fed directly from the panel as it was before. Maybe not then. Come along. Oh. Good. That does now leave me with a hole that needs to be filled, but it's well above the waterline. The new fiberglass is going to go over the top, and then I can fill that from the inside. Or the outside. I mean, it doesn't really matter. The point is it can be filled. I think the next step then is to just sand some of these sticky out bits off. I'm also going to have to take the grinder, yes, the actual angle grinder, the one I do all the damage with, to these corners, because that there is original back end of the boat, and the new fiberglass needs to go over there. Well, it's not going to stick very well to this old gel coat that's been there for 50 years. I need to grind that back to fresh, and equally I'll need to take it round the... Oh, I've just spiked myself with fiberglass, that wasn't clever. I'll need to take it round the corner a bit So I'm going to have to go over that. That's fine, because that I filled myself, but this needs to come back a bit, make a bit more of a contour there. Same again on the other side, and a bit of a trim. Actually, I've already done that one, but that one needs it. So that'll be angle grinder. The top of this, I think I'll just do it with the sander. If I do the angle grinder on this, I'll end up going through the wood. So, and then I'll do the filleting with the new mix of gunge. And that will then be the prep work done, ready to put fiberglass sheets over it. It is about 45 minutes later now. Obviously, I didn't film all of that. I've done a lot of grinding and sanding, and even speeded up, it would have been terribly dull. But essentially, I've sanded and ground away at the back, taking off all the old gel coat so that we are down to fiberglass layers, which the new fiberglass can then stick to. I have also, as you can probably tell, made quite the mess, both of myself and of the boat. And forgot to take off my little microphone while I was doing it, so that got a bit covered in dust as well. Hopefully, you can still hear me. I'm now going to have to do some serious vacuuming, and then I'm ready to mix up some thickened resin to do those little fillets before we finally move on to the fiberglassing. You know, I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be one of those days where by the time I've done everything in the prep, it's time to go home. Luckily, the weather tomorrow looks good as well, so if it does come to that, I can come and do it and do that final bit tomorrow. Let's hope that I get it done. Look at all that lovely fiberglass dust. I did wear my mask, so that's okay, and my hearing protectors. It's all been pretty much sanded back. In particular, I've gone around all these bits at the edges so that we now have exposed fiberglass to tie the new stuff into, and hopefully that'll be okay. This is all, by the way, the new transom bit has all turned out very solid indeed, so I'm quite pleased with that. But a little bit more thickened resin just to go in some spots, and then we'll be ready for the fiberglass layers. I have now vacuumed the dust off, but there's still some residue, so I'm going to give the whole thing a big wipe over with acetone, and that can then dry off in this now very warm sunshine. The sun has now peeked out from over the top of the warehouse and is right beaming down onto the back of the boat, so that acetone will dry off in a flash. Meanwhile, I can mix up some of the putty to go around all the little bits that just need that filleting. I do not have a mixing pot anymore because the last one got full of resin and I threw it away. So I'm going to have to do this by guesswork, which is not ideal, but I know that one of these pretty much near to the top is 500 millilitres or whatever, half a litre. And with the day being so hot, I'm going to do a 1% mix on the hardener, the MEKP, instead of 2% because it's very warm now that sun is out. So I'm also going to use, I think, the chopped strands rather than the colloidal silica for mixing up this fillety stuff, and we'll see how it goes. That's if I can get the top off again. It's stuck, there we go, to the tin. Also forgot to bring a screwdriver to open the tin with, so I'm going to have to use my pliers. That's working. Good. Right. I've got about 3.5 litres of resin left. And at the time of buying this, I thought this was going to be loads, and now I'm not so sure. It might be that proceedings come to an untimely halt because of lack of resin. All right, I can smell it already. I'm going to put the mask on. Right. Okay. Let's have half a thing of that. I don't think we need that much, do we? So that's about 1/3 of a thing, which will be about 180 ml. So at 1%, that's 1.8 ml of hardener, which we'll call 2 ml for the sake of argument. 2 ml of hardener to 100 ml, is that right? Yeah, 10 ml to a litre, 2 to a thing. Now, people have suggested I mix the chopped strands in before the hardener, which is a good plan. I understand that theory, but I am mixing it quite thick, so I'm not quite sure whether it will stir in as well if it's really thick before I put the hardener in. Give it a jolly old stir. The good thing about the chopped strand is you're less likely to breathe it in than the colloidal silica. Someone in the comments on the last video was going, "Why are you wearing a mask, you idiot?" And I don't know if you've ever breathed colloidal silica. It's incredibly flowery light stuff that blows all around at the merest hint of a breeze. And I assure you, you don't want it in your lungs. So yes, I am going to continue wearing a mask, even while I'm using the chopped strands and not the colloidal silica. I think it's probably for the best. Doesn't hinder my breathing at all because it's a good mask. And will hopefully save my lungs a bit. As I put it on, it's got to stay in the shape that I fillet it on with the little sticks. So I don't want it dripping. We'll do a dab down there. We'll do a dab down there. Shake it all in. Shake it all about. You do a hokey cokey and you hope for the best. This is going to take, yes, you see, it's just, it doesn't mix in as the same when you've got the strands in already. It's a harder mix because the strands get in the way of it mixing with the liquid. Will someone please tell me why is it that when Captain Joe of Fishbump TV, the fiberglassing expert, does this kind of thing, the fiberglass bends to his will and does exactly what he wants and goes where it wants and stays where it's wanted. And when I do it, it looks like an absolute turd storm. I've got it in with a lot of bad language and it didn't want to stay even though I made it really thick. But it should now be, when that dries, and it's going to need some sanding again, obviously. I knew there was going to be more grinding and sanding involved. That should be a little bit of a slopey edge now for the new layers of fiberglass to stick to. But for now, I need to let that dry enough that I can sand it. So that means lunch. It is about an hour later, and I've had my lunch, and the fiberglass I did is tacky, I would say. I was toying with grinding it all off, waiting for it to set fully and grinding it off, but I mean, since I'm just going to stick fiberglass over the top of it and none of it's sticking out massively, I reckon I surely should just be able to put a sheet of fiberglass on it as it is. Anyway, with that in mind, and I'll need to do this regardless, I have laid out, as you can see, a huge sheet of fiberglass with my transom template, which is so big I'm going to have to cut half of it, move the whole roll along and then cut the other half. I thought I had a massive roll of chopped strand mat, but I do not seem to have that. I only seem to have vast quantities of what I think is termed 1708. It's this biaxial stuff that's chopped strand on one side and then a cross weave fiberglass on the other. It's the really strong stuff that you do use for the the structural elements. But I was vaguely intending to interweave chopped strand mat with this stuff, but this has chopped strand on it, so maybe I don't need to. Anyway, I'm going to cut at least 4 sheets of this stuff. I think, if I remember rightly, and I am remembering from 18 months ago, a single sheet of this stuff, which is 600 gram of one and 300 of the other, is 900 gram material in its combined form. I think a single sheet of that comes out to about 1 millimetre thick when you've put it in resin. So I need about 6. Was it 6? I'll just slap some on, see how it goes. But I suppose I need to get the first one on first. So let's get to cutting. So I've clamped this down and I'm just going to use my scissors and cut round it. I do know the template is slightly longer on each end than I have cut away for. I don't think that's a problem. I'm a little bit annoyed I don't have any chopped strand mat, because the old chopped strand is good at hiding edges. You can tear it and it makes a nice feathered edge, and I was sort of hoping to feather in the edges. I've got some chopped strand mat, but not enough to do a whole sheet. Anyway, I need to cut these anyway, don't I? So I will cut this bit out, and that's going to waste all that fiberglass. But there's no other way of doing it. It has to be done on the roll because it's so long. I mean, I could do it as set 2 halves, couldn't I? That way and that way. I don't really want to do that. I'd rather it maintained its strength in the middle of the transom. I don't want it to be a join. I think I've got enough of it. We'll go with this and see how we get on. So first things first, let's just cut a piece. Do you know what I'm doing? I may be doing this the wrong way around, because you start with the chopped strand on the bottom. Have I done this the right way around? Yes, I think so. Chopped strand on the bottom, that's that way. I'll find out in a minute. Let's hold that up against the boat. Or is it all just going to fall apart? Don't fall apart on me. This is going to be an absolute bugger to actually glue on, isn't it? Oh, for Pete's sake. That will wrap round like that. It's a little bit long, yes. And that will go like that. Now, it is a bit too long, but I can trim it off, I suppose. We're going to assume that that's right. Now, remember which side to put the blooming resin on, which is that side. Do I cut 3 of them so they're all ready to go, or do I do 1 and then cut some more? I probably cut 3, don't I? I don't know why 3, it just seems like a good number. It's just taken me a ridiculous amount of time to cut 4 templated sheets of fiberglass. I ache. I'm not entirely sure they all followed the template terribly well either, because even though I used clamps to hold the template to the fiberglass, everything kept moving. Because it does. Because it hates me. And it just moves itself, and you just cut here and you're like, oh, it's... Anyway, I'm really not in a good mood. I'm in one of my grumpy moods, and normally being in a grumpy mood would be a sign to stop, because if I proceed with things when I'm in a grumpy mood, stuff doesn't go well. Not that it goes well when I'm in a happy mood, but you know what I mean. However, I want some blimmin' fiberglass on the back of this boat, so I'm determined to do at least 1 of these wretched sheets. I'm pretty sure I haven't got enough resin for all 4 of them, but I want to get at least 1 of them on, for crying out loud. I'm as fed up with this as you are. I want to get some fiberglass on this thing, so I'm going to do at least 1.
Right, what I'm going to do is put some resin roller onto the back of the boat as is, then stick the fiberglass onto it. I may put a bit of resin on that as well. Stick it on the boat, and then slap loads more resin on top. And I'm certain I don't have enough resin to do all the sheets, unfortunately, but we'll get started. So, some hardener. And again, I'm guessing the quantities because I don't really know. I haven't got a measuring jug. So it's still very warm. We want 1% mix. Let's say a 1% mix. That's about 400 ml. So we want 4 of these, isn't it? There's form 8 would be 2% mix. Okay, I think that's right. So stick that in there, stirry stick, stir it all together. Lots of lovely, lovely sticky resin all over the back of it. Working as quickly as I can without panicking. That's the thing I don't do well, and not panicking. This would be easier with 2 people. That's gone on really badly.
Two layers on, and it's a bit of a mess on the second layer. As you saw, I had to actually cut it. I needed to cut them all gently back to they'd be stacked slightly back in layers, and I forgot to actually cut them slightly smaller than each other before I started, so I had to cut that one in a panic, and it's still got a little bit over long at the bottom, so I'll have to trim that back later. But you know, the good thing about fiberglass, it's all trimmable. But that's 2 layers on, and actually it looks better at the back. I'll simply have to hide the bits around the sides with a bit of what's that stuff Mads always uses? The stuff, it's like polyfiller but for boats, and you stick it on and then you sand it down and everything looks brilliant again, hopefully. But for the moment I think that's going to have to do. Yeah, the overlapping didn't work too well on this side. They both ended up inexplicably the same length, even though I chopped a load off. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, never mind. That can now set. I might come back to... I'll run out of resin, won't I? All right, I'll order some more resin and I'll come back on the next good day. I think that'll have to be it for this one. Thank you for putting up with me. Thank you for watching. Cheerio.